Hello, welcome to Fashion Drawing with Mona. Today I want to talk about proportions in fashion, and we will get to the sketching in just a little while, but I want to discuss history of fashion illustration and how the sense of beauty has changed in the last 100 years. Certainly illustrations are very different now than they were before, and I found some old magazines that I have that indicate some pretty interesting changes. So I found this from 1913. Very stiff, very formal, just black and white, very clean, but kind of boring. Look at how the figures look. Not very much movement. It's about selling the fashion and the clothes. Then we move on to the 20s. The 20s, very boyish figures, very flat. Not much definition of hips and shapes of the body. Just very, very stiff, very chic, but again, kind of a very different style than the 1913 to 1928. Here we come into 1932. A lot of Art Deco was starting. Erte, very famous illustrator at the time. Very stylized figures. But there was also a sense of elegance, of exploration of different materials, pastels, watercolors, beautiful figures, a lot more shape, a lot more definition and movement. So that was the 30s. And then I'm coming into the 50s, where there was a lot more expression and use of charcoal. René Boucher, very famous fashion illustrator, beautiful sense of body. You see sort of nipped in waists and more realistic proportions, but again, starting to pull out the figure and have a lot of movement. Again, 1959. More exploration, different materials, different figures, a little bit stiff, but the clothes were much more serious, more formal. Women doing errands, going to the market, dressed up, had hats, had gloves, had big purses, different lifestyle. And then comes the swinging 60s, Twiggy, who changed modeling, have the waif look, Carnaby Street look. So the illustration had changed then. Flat, graphic illustration. Young, hip, swinging models. So this was the 60s. And then came the 70s. Kenneth Paul Block, wonderful illustrator. The time of Women's Wear Daily, very loose. Look at how the proportions have changed from our 1913 drawing. Look how long these figures are. So from the 70s, then the 80s, Antonio Lopez, power shoulders, power suits, bright colors, lots of movement, very exploratory in illustration styles. And then we've got all sorts of different things all the way across the board. The 90s, the 2000s, really unusual and strange kind of proportions. A lot of the figures don't even look like real fashion figures anymore. So here we are in the 2020s, and we'll see where that goes. Speaking of proportions and weights and figures and drawing proportions, just to analyze how weights and heights of models have changed. In the 1920s, the ideal woman's figure and weight and height was 5 foot 5 inches, 127 pounds. In the time of Marilyn Monroe, the popularity of the 50s and the early 60s, her weight was 120 and she was 5'6". Twiggy in the late 60s was 5'6" and weighed 112. Some of the younger models working now are 5'9" and weigh 110 pounds. So you'll see that an idealized figure has changed a tremendous amount. So why don't we start with the 8-head figure. The 8-head figure is a universal measurement for putting down an illustration of a model. However, an 8-head figure is not a fashion figure. A 9-head or even 10-head figure is a fashion figure. But we're going to start just by analyzing and showing you how to go step by step to create a standard 8-head figure. So here we have where I've divided it up. Here's an illustration of an 8-head figure. So what you can do is, if you do have a tracing paper, if you don't, you don't have to. But so we take the head, and I'm not going to take a ruler unless you feel like using a ruler in order to get a center of the figure. I'm just going to do it just to show you, but I never use a ruler. In fact, I really hate rulers because it limits you as far as your freedom. So we've got a head, which is a basic egg shape. So we're going to use that head as the reference point. So for 8 heads, it's really quite simple. You've got the head to the chin. You go another head, and you can do it on yourself, and you can see it's to the bust. You do another head, and that is to the waist. You do the 4th head, and that is to the crotch. The next head is to mid-thigh. The next head is to the knee. The next one is towards the ankle, and then you have to the toes. So this is a really easy way to figure out what goes where. To make it even easier when you work in the arms is that the shoulder, it comes halfway between the heads. The elbow comes to the bottom of the 3rd head. And you can do that by just bringing your elbows into your waist, and you'll see that it hits right at the waist. The wrists hit at mid-thigh, which is half of the head. So everything really works out on a grid, which is really pretty simple to do. So again, you've got on the profile, you have the oval, again, the egg shape, which is on an angle. You've got the same thing here. You've got to the bust. Here's the neck. Here's the bust, the waist. And again, here you see the elbow coming into the waist height, the crotch, mid-thigh, knee, calf, and toe. So there you have a very, very easy way of defining the figure. So let's talk now about basic shapes that will help you in your figure. Again, we still have the 8-head figure. And blocking things out, you can think of simple geometric shapes. You've got circles, and you've got cones, and you've got triangles. Very easy to imagine that the figure has volume. Things go around. They're not flat. They're not straight. They're very, very voluminous as far as having shape that goes around. You may see some tutorials online where you will see somebody taking a ruler, doing very, very flat shapes, and teaching illustration by using silhouettes. I am going to show you how we are going to do the illustration from the inside out, so you feel that it's a real body and not a paper cutout doll. That's not what this is all about. So if you utilize shapes, geometric shapes, so here we've got a triangular shape, another kind of triangle. The joints can be circular, oval. You've got rectangles, again, circles, longer tubes to define. Okay, so think about using geometrics to define going around something. Here's an easy way to determine where you want to start. How do you want to put your figure down? Where do you put it on a page? How do you know that when you start a drawing that you're not going to fall off the page? I've had that experience with students when I've been teaching in colleges and universities, that people don't know what to do with this blank paper. So what you can do, and what the best way to do, is you put a dot at the top and put a dot at the bottom. Extend a straight line down. I will show you. So I want my figure to be here, and then I want my figure to end here, because you certainly don't want to run out of space on your page. So extend a line down. If you feel like using a ruler, go ahead. But there's no such thing as straight lines in anything in nature. So here you've got where your figure is going to be. Take that line and divide it in half. Take that space and divide that in thirds. So you've got the head, the bust, and the waist. The head to the neck, to the bust, to the waist. Then divide this again. You've got the crotch. So you've got head, bust, waist, hip, crotch, again to the knee, again to the mid-calf, and to the ankle. So this is a pretty rough way, but here you're going to start and here you're going to finish. So build your figure out. Again, use your shapes. So you've got triangular shapes. Again, you've got the hips, the knees, the calves, and the ankles. Here's your shapes, arms. Here's the waist, so that's the elbows. Down to the crotch, where the wrists and the hands come to mid-thigh. Very easy way to position your figure so that it is on the page and that you don't extend it all the way off and you go, oh, what did I do to my figure? So that's a very easy way, planning your drawing out on a page. And now I want to show you, because a lot of people don't know that photography changes your drawing. So some people will take a drawing, take a photograph from a magazine, tear it out, and then trace over it, thinking, well, I'm going to do a really cool fashion illustration. But something happens from photography to illustration. Your figure has to be pulled out. And in that case, that's when we have the 9-head figure. And that's what I will be doing next. But let's take this into the context of having a fashion magazine at home and you want to play around and you want to see how you can take a simple photo of a model in a nice situation and make a nice drawing out of it. I'm going to use a pen. So here I'm drawing her body and her neck, and I'm copying it, right? So I'm copying the way that the proportion is, and you see that here's the crotch, here's her arm, she's holding a bag, here's her bust, elbow, that's fine, wrist, hands, holding a purse. Okay, now watch what happens here if we do copying exactly from the picture. Here are her knees, here's the thighs, and here's her legs. Here's the bag she's carrying. Here's her feet. Okay, here's her eyes, nose, and that. So that's the exact copy tracing of the fashion figure. But, you know, she doesn't exactly look very fashionable. And the reason is that's not a fashion figure. That's a basic 8-head figure. To make a fashion illustration, you have to lengthen. And the best way to lengthen the figure is to take it from this point to this point, to bring in another head's worth to make her more fashionable. Also, the photography makes the figures look a little wider. So we're going to trim her down. So trim the waist, trim the shoulders. We're cutting in quite a bit. Okay, here's the navel, here's the crotch. She's already looking more of fashion. But look what we're going to do here. We're going to extend this all the way down to another leg. Suddenly, she's become a lot more fashionable because that is now the indication of beauty is to be 5, 10, and 100 pounds or so. So again, the elements of beauty have changed, and I'm just going to add a little bit more here to make it more of a fashion sketch using thick and thin. When we get to moving the figure, you'll have a lot more fun. Then we can play around. I show you how to move, how to give the figure a lot more life, a little more vitality. But here you have a fashion figure for the 2000s. So tune in next time, and we're going to start drawing fashion illustration. Thank you.